Hello dear student, today we are going to study one of the most important concept, that is prototyping in game design. We all play games and watch games. It is found that all types of games are attributed with a different sort of design factors. That includes mechanics of the game, dynamics of the game, and aesthetics of the game. These components are contributing towards creating user experience. The players who are playing the games, they are getting the holistic as well as pragmatic experience. And this sort of experience create impact on their life in different ways. Therefore, it is essential to study about prototyping in game design because they can play a key role in order to design quality games. Well, these are the outlines of today's lecture that covers the following important topics, that is prototyping, role of prototyping in game design, different types of prototype, advantages and disadvantages of prototypes, and tools required for prototyping. Well, keeping in view those outlines, there are certain learning objectives for today's lecture. What is prototyping? And what is prototype itself? What are the goals of prototypes? And how a prototype functions? What are the different types of prototypes? And their potential advantages and disadvantages in game design. And most importantly, what tools are required to design a prototype for different sort of games, such as conventional games, serious games, educational games, and even entertaining games. Well, when I was designing this lecture, I realized that I need to have a certain processes that are involved in designing games. I thought that which process may play a key role in designing a quality game. I understood that prototyping is one of the process that can be instrumental in game design and its associated prototypes. So prototyping is a creative process to design a game prototypes to solve a specific problem and to achieve the desired goals of the players or the users. Well, if it is a process, it guides us to follow a roadmap to design a specific sort of prototype. But now question arises that what is a prototype itself? Basically, it is a small scale model that is created with a limited functionality at early stage of the game. If we look at this definition of prototype, we can observe that why small scale model is being opted with a limited functionality at early stage. It refers to the certain objectives of the prototype, certain goals of the prototypes that are as follows. There are different goals of prototypes. One of the core goals of prototype is to explore, visualize, and communicate the ideas among all stakeholders of the game, designers and developers, and to provide the feedback to refine those ideas that are to be instrumental for further development of the game in different sort of domains, in different sort of games. Well, now question arises that how a prototype functions or works. Prototypes envision the ideas. It visualizes the ideas. It externalizes the ideas to have a good idea. So envisionment play a key role to generate the ideas at initial level. And once the ideas are being externalized, there is a need to represent those ideas. The prototype represents the ideas in an effective manner. For example, idea can be represented in a textual, visual, and functional forms in an effective manner. And the suitable representation of an idea bring more clarity and direction for further design and development. Once we represented the idea in a suitable manner, there is a need to elaborate those ideas. One of the major function of elaboration is to focus on core components of the game, such as mechanics, dynamics, and aesthetics of the game, and their associated attributes. For example, mechanics is associated with the role of player, rules of the game, and the resources of the game. And the comeback is being involved if the game is being designed for serious kind of objectives that are to be achieved. And even mechanics refers to the narrative of the game, the flow of the game, the flow of interaction, and overall behavior of the game. So this is why it is essential to elaborate the design ideas that are to be implemented for prototyping. Elaboration is one of the core function of prototype that focuses on paying attention to detail on every aspect of the game that is to be designed. And once the ideas are being elaborated, there is need to translate those kind of components into the associated or relevant artifacts. I mean to say the what design artifacts are required to implement in a particular prototype. It depends upon the requirements, objectives, and scope of the game that is to be designed. So after elaboration, we translate the core components and their associated attributes that are being relevant to the particular artifacts, either physical artifacts or the digital artifacts. So translation is very much important to bring much more clarity with a wider range of the concepts that are to be materialized. And after translation, we have to validate those kind of core components, attributes, and artifacts of the game through a variety of testing and even inspection techniques and reviews, auditing, to provide a proof of concept of that idea that is to be used for design of the prototype. And then once idea is being validated, there is a need to transform that idea into reality. So in transformation, the one thing is obvious, that is the change in design of the prototype. Change in design is obvious. and it is noticeable, and that brings the novelty, originality, and even innovation in the game design. So this is the potential of a prototype, that how it works. It guides us from envisionment of ideas to the transformation ideas to turn the imagination into reality for designing various types of prototypes for further development. Well, keeping in view the prototypes and its function, the question arises that how a prototype can play a role in designing effective prototypes. Once we propose a solution or multiple solutions, we start designing prototypes. And once we designed a prototype of any type, we manage to evaluate that prototypes in order to identify the problem as many as possible, but it depends upon what evaluation techniques do you carry, either formative evaluation or summative evaluation. But based on my experience, I believe that formative evaluation is one of the powerful evaluation that helps in identifying the problems as many as possible at every component level that is being involved in the game design, and to eliminate those sort of problems by redesigning the prototypes. Why we are focusing on redesigning the prototypes? It's one of the potential of prototyping that is being played by the researchers in order to understand that how things are being carried out and to achieve the best possible solution. One of the best solution will be obtained when we do have multiple prototypes. Psychologically, it is proven that human being cannot obtain the perfect solution at first place. There is a need to iterate and iterate to achieve the best possible solutions, and then once we obtain that required solution within defined scope objectives of the game design, then we will consider it as a okay prototype, and then job is done as it is being confirmed through role of prototyping. And this process is somehow slow in nature, and it functions like hill climbing. But if it is well directed, you can reach your destination. Metaphorically, as I mentioned, that it plays a role like a hill climbing. Well, in order to achieve a best possible solutions, there are plenty of prototypes. For example, physical prototypes, digital prototypes, visual prototypes, rapid development prototypes, and even video prototypes, vertical and horizontal prototypes. And even beyond, many types of prototypes can be created. By keeping with the scope and objectives of the prototypes, they are being classified into two categories. One of the category is the low fidelity prototypes. These prototypes are initial version of the game design. Use paper material as a tool to design a prototype, and they represent a physical form factor and their associated features, which are being mentioned earlier. For example, post-it notes is being used as a low fidelity prototype. It helps in exploring the ideas, organizing the ideas, and communicating the ideas among all stakeholders, where all stakeholders put their ideas on a particular wall and then they try to connect those ideas to come out with the low fidelity prototype that is required within the defined scope objectives of the game design. There is another type of low fidelity prototypes, cardboards. Cardboards are being derived from plenty of use cases. You see, every prototype has its own use case, and we should familiar from those kind of use cases. Who are the users of that particular prototype? There is another prototype that is a storyboard. It is one of the interesting prototype that involves storytelling, narrative of the game that is to be developed. The storyboards include the situations, scenarios, number of scenes in each scenario and frames, and the rest of bits and pieces required to design a prototype. Basically, storyboards are being derived from situations, scenarios, number of scenes, and frames. It depends upon the how game environment is being created, what assets are being materialized in a game design, how many levels are being considered in the game design. So again, it depends upon the focus and objective, to say scope and objective of the game design. There is another important type of fidelity prototypes that are sketches. Sketches are instrumental to translate the ideas into number of screens and put the number of functionalities associated with different sort of screens and number of scenes and the different sort of levels and environment that is involved in the game design and the artifacts that are considered in the game designs. So everything from beginning to end can be sketched, and such illustration can be instrumental for better prototypes. Well, keeping in view the low fidelity prototypes, they do have a certain advantages. The low fidelity prototype is easy to design. It doesn't require a specific or a specialized skills, tools, and resources. Low fidelity prototype is simple to design. It focuses on basics, very core components of the game design within a defined rules, and it ensures the simplicity of that prototypes. Low fidelity prototype is very quick to design, where the prototype can be designed rapidly within short frame of time. And most importantly, low fidelity prototypes are practical in nature. It showcases the functionality, UI and UX, and usability of the prototype. And most interestingly, low fidelity prototypes are testable for confirming the proof of concept by considering various kind of testing. Maybe reviews, inspection, observations, checklist, and other alpha beta testing. And those prototypes are inexpensive. Low fidelity prototype doesn't require a significant amount of finance or budget. They can be designed at low cost. These advantages of low fidelity prototypes make them instrumental, encouraging, collaborating for the game designers. Well, another type is high fidelity prototypes. These are considered as extended version of low fidelity prototypes. They require a software or a tool to design high fidelity prototypes. These prototypes represent a digital form factor and their associated features. When I talk about the form factor, it is associated with the size, with the shape, with the orientation of every aspect of the game in terms of its functionality, its usability, its UI, UX, and many other kind of aspects that are involved, as I mentioned earlier. Well, high fidelity prototypes are functional in nature. They demonstrate the pragmatic behavior of a prototype that refers to the basic functionality, utilities, and even usability of the prototype. They are interactive in nature, by which we can understand that whether prototype is supporting unimodal interaction or multimodal interaction, or it is supporting the direct interaction or indirect interaction, and what sort of style of interaction is being supported by the high fidelity prototype. And high fidelity prototypes are also observed or understood in different sort of simulations where the user or player behavior is being observed or simulated, and even the game environment is being simulated at unit level, component level, module level, and many other kind of core components that already mentioned, that how each and every component is being interconnected and conforming the overall narrative or story of the game design in a particular situation. Well, again, the high fidelity prototypes are supporting to virtualize many kind of prototypes by including the concept of augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, and even visual tracking system, to understand that how a game can be designed for immersive experience or virtual reality experience or mixed reality, and even other aspects of visual tracking systems. As these systems are being observed as detailed design that is being derived from low fidelity to high fidelity. Keeping in with the high fidelity prototypes, there are certain advantages, such as high fidelity prototypes are realistic representation of an idea. When I say realistic representation, I mean to say that it looks like a similar game which is to be designed at full scale. The realistic representation introduces a confidence among all stakeholders that they are working in the right direction. They are rigorous and relevant. The game designers are very much familiar in terms of all core components that are being involved in game design and how each component is understood in detail according to its functionality, usability, and various UI and UX aspects, and even the assets of game that are being considered at full scale of the game. And it is also been confirmed that how high fidelity prototype is suggesting that whether it is aligned with the scope and objective of the game. High fidelity prototypes have another advantage, that is reduce the risk of failure. They encourage us that how we can mitigate the risk that is involved in a game design at prototyping level. So imagine that how high fidelity prototypes are instrumental towards the full scale development by reducing the risk of failure and even the other kind of risks that are involved in designing a game. These prototypes are motivating too. Motivating in terms of productivity, in communicating ideas, in keeping the layout clear with a wider range of scale, and many things which are involved in teamwork or maybe interaction design that is being part of the high fidelity prototypes. They provide engaging experience and even immersive experience to its players by many ways. They keep them focused, they give the time, and they completely involve in prototypes, so particularly the high fidelity prototypes. Well, despite of having advantages and disadvantages, there are certain disadvantages of prototypes. They lack in robustness. They involve small scale functionality, and even they are dealing with the paper prototypes, lacking in the aesthetics of that. It is hard to define the scope of prototype which is to be designed, and it is hard to communicate the instructions among all the stakeholders, and it's lacking in flexibility. For example, if anything that is being designed, we cannot make it change. We can go for redesigning that kind of artifacts. So such disadvantages are being associated with the prototypes. More interestingly, now question arises, how do we design prototypes of a different games, either conventional games or serious games and even educational and entertaining games. So such tools are known according to their associated functionalities, such as Figma is leading tool, Sketch, Envision, Adobe XD, Unity. These are the tools that are associated with the rigorous functionalities and features and giving confidence to game designers, particularly the prototype designers, to design a prototypes of variety of games that are being required by the end users in gaming community. Well, keeping in view the potential of the game and its associated components and the role of prototyping as a whole, it is understood that prototyping is a powerful, creative, and effective process or a strategy that is carried out to design game prototypes at early stage. It assists in obtaining the feedback and in developing an insight and a foresight with a strong foundation and rationality to proceed further to solve problems. It helps in obtaining a best possible solution out of many solutions and guide to make well-informed design decisions by practicing iteration. Prototyping consolidates a variety of learning experience of game designers and set a stage for successful transition to a large-scale development of a game. Thank you so much. That's all from my side.